The real reason why millennials know a lot about pop culture before they were born, whereas Gen Z don't, is way more fascinating than you think. A lot of people have made the observation that it seems like millennials and Gen Xers have a rich knowledge of pop culture like movies, TV shows, and music from decades and decades before they were ever born, whereas Gen Z and Gen Alpha don't seem to have much of a frame of reference for pop culture that was prior to their own lifetime. And I know there's exceptions. I know that you, the Zoomer that's watching this, has a vast knowledge of pop culture before you were born, but I'm talking about in general. And the reason for this is because millennials, and to a certain extent Gen Xers, grew up in what I like to call the dawn of cable television. Now, cable TV was actually invented in the late 1940s in order for people living in remote areas to be able to watch TV, and it developed throughout the 1970s as a way to receive premium pay channels like HBO. But it didn't really explode in popularity and mass adoption until the late 80s and early 90s, with over 85% of American families having cable and the number of channels ballooning into the hundreds. Prior to this, there was just a handful of network TV stations, and they were only on for a limited amount of the day. At some point, they would just go off air and come back on the next morning. But cable channels were on for 24 hours a day, and because they weren't competing for network airwaves, they could be about anything. This is when we got our first ever dedicated subject channels like Comedy Central, which was a channel that was all about comedy, or Cartoon Network, which was a channel that only showed cartoons. The reason why companies did this is because in the 1980s, television was becoming a much more important part of the average American's life, and they realized that there was a lot more opportunity for profit with advertising if they just upped the amount of content that they were able to show us. And so they started spinning off all these channels with all these different themes. But the issue is that they just didn't have the content to fill the 24-hour slots. So the way these companies were able to fill out their 24 hours of programming was just by buying old libraries of movies and TV shows and then just playing them all day. This is the very reason why me, somebody who grew up in the 90s, has a vast knowledge of references from the 1930s and 40s, because I grew up watching Looney Tunes on Cartoon Network. Because Turner Broadcasting, the creator of Cartoon Network, bought the WB Looney Tunes library and used that content to fill their time slots. The reason why millennials have this vast knowledge of old pop culture is because when we were kids, television had become a very major part of our lives, and we were just sitting there passively being shown all of this content because they were just trying to fill these time slots. Meanwhile, Gen Z and Gen Alpha have grown up in a time where they are embarrassed with new content. Every single day, hundreds of movies and TV show episodes and videos on the internet and songs are released. You could spend the rest of your natural life just trying to catch up with the stuff that came out in the last year. And if something's already been out for a week, it's old news. So they're just trying to keep up with yesterday, let alone are they going to watch some B movie from the 1970s. So a lot of millennials and Gen Xers make fun of them for this, but I think it's understandable. But what do you think?